Why did the general's gaze linger on a man nobody noticed? Michael Winters had worked at Fort Braxton for 3 years, a quiet clerk in his early 40s who moved through the compound with the weight of papers under his arm and a silence that made him invisible. His wire-rimmed glasses caught the morning sun, but even that brief glint wasn't enough to draw attention. To most, he was a pencil pusher, the kind of man whose world revolved around staplers, files, and regulations, and he preferred it that way. His office desk was immaculate, pens aligned in perfect order, files stacked with geometric precision, not a corner out of place. Only one personal item decorated the space, a framed mountain landscape, mist curling around jagged peaks. He stared at it sometimes, though never for long, as if too much memory lived in the shape of those mountains. Jessica Parker, the office manager, bustled nearby, juggling phone calls and deadlines. Greg Thompson, always with a joke and a cardboard tray of coffee cups, was the self-appointed morale officer of the admin staff. To them, Michael was reliable, thorough, a man who showed up, did his work and went home. Nothing more. But sometimes the mask slipped. It happened that morning in the break room. Jessica's coffee cup slid from the edge of the table, a slow-motion disaster. Before anyone could react, Michael's hand shot out a blur, catching the cup before a drop spilled. For a moment, silence, eyes wide, then nervous laughter. "Lucky catch," Michael muttered, but he didn't meet anyone's gaze. Colonel James Roberts had been there too, a veteran with gray steel hair and eyes that didn't miss much. He watched Michael longer than anyone else, and in that look something shifted, suspicion, recognition, a door opening that Michael had hoped would stay locked. Later, Jessica stopped by his desk. "Reflexes like a cat," she said softly, almost playful, but her curiosity lingered. Michael adjusted his glasses, offered the faintest smile. "Played baseball as a kid." The explanation felt thin, like a paper wall. Then the intercom blared. "Emergency drill." The office scrambled into lockdown procedure, groaning about wasted time. But the drill wasn't routine. Major Wilson stormed in, a missing file, tampered security logs. Panic rippled through the staff. Michael stayed calm, too calm. When Wilson barked orders, Michael asked if he'd checked Protocol Alpha 7. The major froze. The room froze. Alpha 7 wasn't public knowledge. It was buried deep, a redundant security layer known only to those with clearance far above a clerk's. Yet Michael had named it without hesitation. Within half an hour, the file was recovered, exactly as he'd said. Wilson was unsettled, Jessica puzzled. But Colonel Roberts watched like a man who had seen this game before and now recognized the player across the board. That evening in the empty parking lot, Roberts called out, "Mr. Winters, a word." His voice carried the weight of command, the kind that left little choice. "You shouldn't know Alpha 7, Roberts said, his tone low, dangerous. "It doesn't cross an administrator's desk. It isn't in any manual." Michael's expression didn't change. "I must have misremembered." "No," Roberts said, "you didn't." His gaze cut deep. "We'll talk again soon." When the colonel walked away, Michael stood alone in the fading light. Only then did the mask falter. His features tightened, shadows rising in his eyes, the kind that came from memories better buried. 15 minutes later, he was home. A modest one-bedroom apartment, everything arranged with military neatness. The same mountain landscape from his desk hung on the wall. His routine unfolded with robotic precision: change clothes, prepare dinner, clean, wash, sleep. To anyone watching, he was exactly what he seemed: quiet, orderly, unremarkable. But there was a door no one saw. Behind the clothes in his closet, a hidden panel clicked open. A room revealed itself, walls covered in maps, photographs, coded notes. A weapons case, sealed tight. A high-end computer system alive with encrypted files. This was Michael's real life, the one Fort Braxton never saw. He stood before a map of Afghanistan, eyes fixed on a red-marked valley. His reflection in the glass wasn't that of a clerk. It was harder, sharper. eyes haunted by years of shadows. Lieutenant Michael Winters, Delta Force, officially killed in action 2008. But ghosts don't stay dead. That night the nightmares came. 2:17, his body convulsed, sweat-soaking sheets, the Hindu Kush mountains rising in his mind. The Korangal Valley, soldiers moving in silence, then chaos. Bullets, fire, the ambush too perfect to be chance. Hayes falling, his captain, his brother. Blood, betrayal. And the man with the Russian accent leaning close, studying his face. Michael woke with a gasp, reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. His scar ached at the shoulder where the bullet had torn through years ago. He dragged himself into the bathroom, staring at the reflection. A face lined with years of silence. A scar burning like memory. He turned on the shower, let the water mask the sound of his breathing. Sleep wouldn't return. It never did. So he trained. In the darkness of his apartment, he moved through martial arts forms, not the kind taught in gyms, but the kind designed for survival. His body flowed, precise, controlled, a ghost reclaiming muscle memory. Hours passed until dawn broke through the window. By then, the mask was back. Glasses, slouched shoulders, mild expression. The clerk walking into another day. At Fort Braxton, the world saw paperwork. They didn't see the man who had been left for dead. Not yet. But Roberts did. And when their eyes met again at the base entrance, the colonel said only one thing, casual on the surface, sharp beneath. Beautiful morning for a run, don't you think? Michael's heart tightened. He hadn't been running. Why would a general waste his time on a clerk? At 3:55 that afternoon, Michael straightened his desk, aligned the pens, and shut down his computer. Routine. Always routine. Then he walked across the quad toward Colonel Roberts' office, every step measured, every breath steady. To anyone watching, it was nothing, just another admin clerk summoned for paperwork. But beneath the surface, every sense sharpened. Roberts knew something. The only question was how much. The sergeant outside the colonel's office didn't ask questions. He just nodded, let Michael in. The door closed behind him with a soft, final click. Roberts sat behind a desk lined with commendations and photographs from decades of service. The man radiated authority, but there was something else in his gaze, recognition. He didn't waste time. "I'm going to skip the dance," Roberts said, removing his glasses. "Lieutenant Winters." The name hit like a bullet. Michael didn't move, didn't speak. He kept the mask on, but inside, calculations spiraled, exits, angles, contingencies. Roberts leaned forward. "Delta Force, Korangal Valley, officially killed in action 2008. He tapped a folder. "Except you didn't die, did you?" Michael's silence was an answer in itself. "I'm not your enemy," Roberts continued. "CIA, Eastern Europe desk, Cold War. I know what deep cover looks like, and I know you're hunting someone." His voice dropped lower. "Petrov." The name froze the room. Alexander Petrov, Russian GRU, Spetsnaz background. The man Michael had seen in the valley, the one who whispered into the radio as Hayes bled out. 10 years of shadows, chasing threads, whispers, fragments, all leading to that name. And now Roberts had said it aloud. "What do you want?" Michael asked finally, the clerk's tone gone, replaced by the soldier beneath. "To help," Roberts said, "because your enemy is my enemy, and because next week Petrov walks into this base." The silence stretched, thick, heavy. Roberts didn't flinch, he let it settle. Then he dropped the final piece. "Petrov is part of a NATO delegation. Official cover, military attaché. Real status, senior GRU officer, a recruiter, a handler. He'll be here observing hand-to-hand demonstrations, within reach." Michael's jaw tightened. 10 years he had waited for this. 10 years of pretending to be dead. 10 years of hunting shadows while his captain's grave sat cold. And now, Petrov would walk through the gates of Fort Braxton as an honored guest. "Why come to me?" Michael asked. "You've got channels, resources." Robert's expression hardened. "Because the channels are compromised. The same network that betrayed your team, it's still alive. Officers, contractors, intelligence staff, selling secrets covering for Petrov and others like him. A pause. You're not just hunting one man, Winters. You're hunting a cancer. Michael studied him, searching for cracks, deception, signs of a trap. Roberts looked back without blinking. I'm giving you a choice. Work with me or keep working alone. But if you want Petrov, if you want answers, this is the chance. For a moment, Michael thought of Hayes. His laugh, his hand on his shoulder, the way he fell when the bullets hit. The ambush had been too perfect. Someone had sold them out. Hayes deserved more than a grave and a folded flag. Finally, Michael nodded once. I'll think about it. Roberts smiled faintly. Fair enough, we'll talk again. But when Michael left that office, his mind wasn't on paperwork anymore. It was on the shadow that had hunted him for 10 years and the chance to turn, finally, and face it. That night the base hummed with NATO preparations. Security patrols doubled. Crews polished every surface. Administrators worked late, drowning in clearance forms. At Michael's desk sat a stack of them, fresh from command. One after another, names, backgrounds, photographs. He processed them with steady precision, every keystroke part of the mask, until one name froze his hand. Colonel Alexander Petrov. The photograph showed a man in his 50s, features hardened by years of war, eyes as cold as Michael remembered from the valley. The face that leaned over him as blood soaked the dirt. The face that had whispered, primary target down, secondary alive. Michael suppressed the surge of rage, the flicker of memory. His hand signed the clearance as calmly as if it were any other. A paper shuffled, a box checked. Nothing unusual to anyone watching, but inside the ghost stirred. By morning, word spread through the base. Petrov himself would be watching the combat demonstration, and Sergeant Blake Davidson, the pride of Fort Braxton, would be the one in the ring. Davidson, 6'2", 240, four-time Armed Forces MMA champion. A man who lived for the spotlight, who crushed opponents with brute force and arrogance. But Davidson had secrets. Roberts had shown the footage training Russian liaison officers after hours, sharing techniques not meant to leave American soil, taking money, subtle but unmistakable. And the Russian officer he met with, Lieutenant Kassanov, Petrov's man. It was a chain, Michael realized. Davidson to Kassanov, Kassanov to Petrov, Petrov to Chimera, the code name Michael had chased for a decade. A shadow inside American intelligence, the betrayer of his team. The plan unfolded quickly. The demonstration would not be choreographed. It would be a sparring match. Davidson against a volunteer. Roberts had engineered it perfectly. At the next base-wide briefing, Davidson stood before the entire auditorium, muscles flexing, voice booming. Who thinks they can last 3 minutes in the ring with me? Silence. Nervous laughter. No one moved. And then from the back row a voice, I'll volunteer. Heads turned. Whispers rippled. Michael Winters, the quiet clerk, the man who filed papers and wore glasses too big for his face, was walking down the aisle. Davidson's smirk curdled into contempt. This is a joke. General, we can't let a pencil pusher embarrass the entire base. But Hamilton, the base commander, studied Michael with new eyes. Maybe he remembered the clerk's observations during the security meeting, the way Roberts had vouched for him. You understand what this means, Winters? Michael nodded, yes, sir. Davidson leaned in close, a grin like a knife. I'm going to make you regret this. Michael looked up through his glasses, mild as ever. It's just a demonstration, Sergeant. But inside the ghost smiled. 6 days. 6 days until the clerk disappeared and the soldier returned. Why would a clerk challenge a man who broke soldiers in half? The whispers spread through Fort Braxton faster than orders on a radio. By noon, everyone knew. Michael Winters, the quiet clerk, had volunteered to face Sergeant Blake Davidson. The reactions were predictable. Some laughed. Others shook their heads in pity. But a few watched more closely, curious, unsettled. Why would a man who spent his days buried in paperwork step into a fight he couldn't possibly win? Jessica cornered him first. Her voice carried more worry than anger. "Michael, you need to back out. Davidson isn't just going to play with you. He's planning to hurt you." Michael offered the same calm smile he always did, adjusting his glasses. "It's just a demonstration." Greg leaned on the desk beside him, unusually serious. "You don't get it. Davidson's got a mean streak. He put 2 Rangers in the infirmary last month, and those were trained fighters. He's taking this personally." Michael looked at them both, let the concern sink in, then returned to his files. "I made a commitment," he said softly. "I'll see it through." But inside, his mind was already somewhere else. That night he left his apartment under the eyes of the surveillance vehicle parked outside. He followed routine because routine was safety, visible habits that reassured watchers. Cook dinner, wash dishes, read a book, lights out. But midnight was his real hour. Through a concealed exit in the building's basement, he slipped into the night, his movements blending into shadows. 15 minutes later, he was inside a decommissioned maintenance shed on the far perimeter of the base. Colonel Roberts had given him the key, and more importantly, the time, a 4-day window before the cameras in that sector were repaired. The shed was Spartan but sufficient. A mat on the floor, a heavy bag, rusted weight racks, and a metal case that opened with Roberts' code, files, photographs, bank records, Davidson's history laid bare. Michael read everything: offshore deposits, conveniently timed discharges and reinstatements, deployments near compromised operations, and most damning, his presence in Afghanistan in 2008. Not in Korangal Valley, but close enough to pass information, close enough to be a link in the chain that led to Hayes' death. Petrov's file was worse. GRU operations across Europe. Signals intelligence tying him to someone codenamed Chimera, the shadow Michael had hunted for 10 years. Whoever Chimera was, they were high-level, embedded, untouchable. The kind of traitor who could order an ambush and bury the evidence. The files were fuel, but the training, that was fire. Michael began slowly. Old Delta drills, movements burned into muscle memory. The first night was about awakening what he had buried: stances, counters, precision strikes aimed not at power but at efficiency. He studied Davidson's patterns: MMA reliance on brute force, predictable takedowns, right side bias. Against weaker opponents it worked. Against Michael it would be a trap. Every session followed the same rhythm: technical drills, timed simulations, 3 minutes exactly, the length of the coming match. Visualization, running every possible scenario. What if Davidson recognized him? What if Petrov did? What if the demonstration spiraled into chaos? By dawn, his body was soaked in sweat, shoulder scar aching, but his movements were sharper, faster. Lieutenant Winters, the man buried under 10 years of silence, was clawing his way back. And yet even ghosts feel doubt. The second night, after hours of drills, Michael sat on the floor, back against the wall. His breath slowed, the shed quiet except for the creak of chains from the heavy bag. He thought of Jessica's worried eyes, Greg's concern, the way the whole base now looked at him differently, not invisible anymore, but exposed. What if he blew his cover too soon? What if Chimera realized the ghost was alive? A moral weight pressed down. He had chosen to disappear for a reason, to protect what was left of his team's honor, to hunt from the shadows. But stepping into that ring meant shedding the mask. It meant letting the world see him again. And maybe that was the point. The third night he returned to the shed, but the tension followed him. When he arrived at his apartment earlier, he had noticed the difference. The surveillance car outside, a different driver, more alert. And inside his home, subtle signs of intrusion. Scratches at the lock, a transmitter hidden behind the bathroom cabinet, another wired into the ceiling light. And beneath his mattress, a photograph. His team, Korangal Valley 2008. Himself and Hayes, faces half hidden under helmets, caught by a telephoto lens. On the back, block letters scrawled in neat ink, Koringal remembers. Do you? Michael stared at it under the dim lamp. His heartbeat slowed, steady. A warning, a taunt. They knew who he was. They wanted him rattled, second-guessing. Instead, the message hardened him. If they were this desperate, it meant he was close. Close enough that the network felt threatened. Close enough to draw them into the open. He replaced the photo exactly where he found it, pretending not to notice. Let them believe their game was working. He would play his part. At 2:17 a.m., when the nightmares usually came, Michael staged the motions, tossing, sweating, rising for water. To anyone watching through hidden mics, he was just a man haunted by insomnia, not a soldier calculating counters in silence. By dawn, he was back at the shed, drills sharper, counters tighter, visualization more precise. Davidson's arrogance would make him sloppy. Michael would let him believe he was in control right up until he was. On the fifth day, Jessica confronted him again. "Michael, this isn't you. You're not a fighter." He looked at her for a long moment, wanting to tell her everything, wanting to unburden the truth. Instead, he said, "Sometimes people are more than they seem." She shook her head, frustrated, afraid. "Then I hope you know what you're doing." Greg added quietly, "If you get hurt, they'll laugh. But if you surprise him, they'll never forget." Michael only nodded. That night he met Roberts and Sullivan in the shed. They spoke in hushed tones, trading updates. Roberts confirmed what Michael already suspected. Davidson had received a call from Petrov that morning. Instructions, encouragement, or orders. The colonel's warning was clear. Davidson isn't just an arrogant fighter. He's a link in the chain. If he realizes who you are, he won't stop at humiliation. He'll try to end you. Michael met his gaze steadily. He'll try. On the sixth night, Michael rehearsed one final time. 3 minutes on the timer. Davidson's patterns mapped, his arrogance dissected. By the end, Michael's movements were fluid, seamless. The ghost of Lieutenant Winters stood fully awake. When dawn broke, Michael walked out of the shed, erasing every trace of his presence. To anyone watching, he was still the clerk, but inside, the soldier was ready. Tomorrow he would step into the ring. Tomorrow Davidson would see the truth, and Petrov would watch. For 10 years, Michael Winters had hunted shadows. Now the shadows were closing in. And he was ready to meet them. Why would half the base pack into a training hall to watch a clerk get broken? Thursday afternoon, the air inside Fort Braxton's training facility was electric. Soldiers leaned against railings. Officers stood at the edges. Even civilian staff filled the bleachers, their chatter a mix of anticipation and disbelief. Word had spread like wildfire. Michael Winters, the quiet clerk, was about to face Sergeant Blake Davidson in front of everyone and in front of NATO. At the front row sat the delegation. Flags on lapels, uniforms crisp, notepads ready. Among them, Colonel Alexander Petrov. His posture was relaxed, almost bored, but his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, missed nothing. Every movement, every twitch, every silence he absorbed like data. Michael stood at the edge of the mat, glasses on, posture slightly stooped, the picture of mildness. He looked like he didn't belong in the same building, let alone the same ring. Davidson, by contrast, was a spectacle. Muscled, confident, smirking as he warmed up, every motion a show of dominance. He cracked his knuckles, stretched his shoulders, glanced at Michael like he was already broken. Jessica sat in the bleachers, wringing her hands. Greg beside her muttered, "This is going to be ugly." A whistle cut the noise. General Hamilton stepped forward, his voice steady. "This is a demonstration of combat training techniques, not a competition. 3 minutes. Safety protocols in place. Begin." Davidson didn't wait. He surged forward like a predator, hands high, grin wide. 3 minutes, clerk," he growled. "Let's see what you've got." Michael raised his hands in an awkward guard, shuffling back, letting the sergeant crowd him. His movements looked clumsy, uncertain, like a man who had only seen fights on television. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Davidson's smirk widened. "Pathetic," he said, throwing a heavy jab. Michael flinched, absorbing it on his forearm, stumbling back a step. Gasps, then chuckles from the audience. Davidson pressed harder, combinations of punches, forcing Michael to retreat. But behind the glasses, Michael's eyes tracked everything: angles, weight shifts, breath. Davidson was fast but sloppy, overconfident. Every move catalogued, every rhythm mapped. A minute passed. Michael's guard looked barely holding. His shoulders hunched, his steps awkward. Davidson's voice carried across the mat. "This isn't paperwork, Winters, this is war." Another punch grazed Michael's cheek, snapping his head to the side. Jessica half rose in the bleachers, face pale. Roberts, standing at the edge of the mat, gave no sign, but his eyes never left Michael. Then Davidson went for the takedown. Classic pattern: rush forward, hook behind the knee, use his weight to crush. It worked on every opponent, strength against weakness. But this time, as Davidson lunged, Michael shifted. Barely perceptible, just enough. Davidson's balance faltered, his momentum carrying him forward into emptiness. He stumbled, caught himself, fury flashing across his face. The laughter died. Michael straightened his glasses, face calm, expression mild. "Careful, Sergeant." The crowd stirred. Something had changed. Davidson snarled, charging again, faster, heavier. He swung a hook, a hammer meant to end it. Michael dipped, redirected. The fist grazed air. Davidson's body twisted, exposed. Michael's counter was subtle, a palm strike to the chest, hidden in the flow. To the audience it looked like luck. To Davidson it felt like a wall. He staggered back, eyes wide. Now whispers rippled. Officers leaned forward. NATO observers murmured in their languages. Even Petrov's gaze sharpened, narrowing. Davidson roared, anger flushing his face. "You think you're clever, you think you can embarrass me," he charged again, swinging wildly. Michael absorbed, redirected, deflected. Every second that passed, his movements grew cleaner, sharper. The clumsy guard fell away. The stoop straightened. The soldier emerged. 2 minutes in. Davidson was sweating, frustrated. Michael breathed evenly, glasses still perched, shirt unwrinkled. Jessica stared, her mouth slightly open. He's not." Greg cut her off, eyes wide. "No, he's not who we thought." The final minute began. Davidson abandoned control. His pride demanded domination, not survival. He lunged, tried to grapple, tried to crush. But Michael flowed around him. A twist here, a redirection there. Davidson's brute strength turned against him, each attempt collapsing under its own weight. And then, with 15 seconds left, Michael struck. A seamless counter. Davidson lunged, Michael pivoted, redirected the sergeant's mass, and with one fluid motion dropped him flat on his back. The mat thundered under the impact. The crowd erupted. Gasps, shouts, silence. Davidson blinked up at the ceiling, chest heaving, disbelief on his face. Michael stepped back, glasses still in place, posture composed. 3 minutes, he said quietly. The whistle blew. Applause scattered, then swelled. Some cheered, others whispered. A few officers exchanged knowing looks. The quiet clerk had just dismantled the base's most dangerous fighter in front of NATO, in front of Petrov. Michael offered Davidson a hand. For a heartbeat, it seemed the sergeant might refuse. But under the weight of the crowd's eyes, he gripped it, pulled himself up, jaw clenched. His whisper carried venom. "This isn't over, Clerk, not by a long shot." Michael's face remained mild. "I know." As Davidson stormed off, Robert stepped forward, his voice smooth, official. "Thank you, Mr. Winters. A fine demonstration." But beneath the words, his eyes said more. "Now Petrov has seen you. Now the game begins." Michael adjusted his glasses, glanced at the NATO delegation. Petrov's gaze was locked on him, unblinking, cold. Recognition, suspicion, interest. Michael couldn't tell. But he felt it. The same weight he'd felt in the valley. The same eyes studying him as Hayes bled out. The crowd dispersed slowly, buzzing with disbelief. gossip already spreading through every corner of the base. But the real story wasn't in the bleachers. It sat in the front row, in the shape of a Russian colonel who had just watched a dead man fight. That night, Michael returned to his apartment under heavier surveillance than before. He kept his routine intact: dinner, dishes, lights out. But inside, his mind replayed every second of the match. Davidson's fury, the crowd's shock, Petrov's stare. For 10 years he had hunted shadows. Tonight the shadow had seen him. And tomorrow it might strike. Why didn't Petrov clap with the rest of the delegation? The training hall had emptied hours ago, but the echo of the match still lingered through the base like static after a storm. Everywhere Michael walked, eyes followed. Whispers trailed. The quiet clerk had dismantled a champion, and no one could fit the pieces together. At his desk the next morning, Jessica couldn't hold back. "Who are you, really?" Michael paused mid-signature. Her voice trembled, not accusing, but searching. "That wasn't luck. That wasn't training videos or some hobby on the weekends. You moved like someone who's done it before." He set the pen down, adjusted his glasses. "Sometimes people surprise you." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "It wasn't just Davidson you surprised. Petrov didn't look away the whole time. He knew something." Michael's eyes flicked up. "You noticed?" "I notice everything," she whispered. Then more softly, "And I don't like where this is going." Greg joined them, unusually subdued. Davidson, been sulking all morning, broke a locker door with his fist. "He'll come for you, Michael, maybe not in the ring, maybe not even on base. But he's humiliated. He won't let it stand." Michael gave a faint smile. "Then I'll be careful." But caution wasn't enough anymore. The mask was cracked. That night, Colonel Roberts summoned him. The meeting wasn't in an office or briefing room, but in a dimly lit chapel on the edge of the base, a place soldiers rarely went unless they carried grief. Candles flickered faintly against the stained glass, their glow broken by shadows. "You've stirred the hornet's nest," Roberts said without preamble. Michael stood at the end of a pew, hands loose at his sides. "Petrov saw me." "He did," Roberts confirmed. "And not just him. The delegation had 2 other watchers, GRU officers under cover. They'll report what they saw. Word will travel fast. The ghost is alive." Michael's jaw tightened. He thought of Hayes again, of that last moment in the valley. "Then it's begun." Roberts studied him carefully. "There's still a choice, Winters. You could disappear again, go deeper, let them chase shadows. And let Davidson keep feeding him. Let Chimera keep selling out our people." Michael shook his head. "No, this ends here." The colonel nodded once, a flicker of respect in his steel-gray eyes. "Then we move fast. Surveillance is already heavier around you. That photograph they planted. Their way of rattling the cage. They're testing your response." Michael thought of the photo under his mattress. "I didn't give them one." "Good," Roberts said. "Then they'll escalate. Petrov doesn't gamble. He'll probe quietly at first. Expect an approach." Michael gave the faintest smile. "I'm counting on it." The next day proved Roberts right. It happened in the cafeteria of all places. Michael carried a tray like always, a sandwich, black coffee, nothing unusual. He sat alone, routine, predictable, until a shadow loomed across the table. Colonel Alexander Petrov. The Russian's uniform was immaculate, his medals gleaming. He carried no tray, no pretense of blending in. He sat across from Michael as though it were prearranged. For a long moment, silence. Then, in perfect English, Petrov said, "Impressive what you did yesterday." Michael kept his tone mild. "Just a demonstration." Petrov's eyes narrowed slightly, as if amused. "I've seen many demonstrations. That was not one." Michael took a sip of coffee. "Maybe I was lucky." "Luck does not catch cups before they fall," Petrov said softly. The line pierced through him like a knife. The break room, the coffee cup, the reflex that had caught Jessica's mug weeks earlier. Petrov knew. He had been watching longer than Michael realized. Michael set the cup down carefully. "Was there something you wanted, Colonel?" Petrov leaned back, folding his hands. "I want to understand. A man hides his strength for years, then shows it at the perfect moment. Why? To impress, to send a message, or to remind old enemies that ghosts can still bleed?" Michael met his gaze, calm, steady. "Sometimes a man is just tired of being underestimated." Petrov's smile was thin, sharp. "Yes, and sometimes a man is tired of hiding." For a moment the cafeteria seemed to fade. Just two men, one living in shadows, the other commanding them. Michael could almost hear the wind of the valley again, the sound of Hayes' last breath. Petrov's voice broke the silence. "Be careful, Mr. Winters. Ghosts rarely die twice." He rose, his presence lingering even after he walked away. That night Michael didn't sleep. He sat in his apartment, lights off, the city's glow seeping through blinds. He thought of Robert's warning, of Davidson's fury, of Petrov's eyes studying him like prey. For 10 years Michael had lived like a ghost, unseen, unnoticed. But the mask was gone. The world had seen him now, and the shadows were moving. The next day, the retaliation came. Davidson found him outside the motor pool where the roar of engines covered sound. "You humiliated me," he spat, eyes bloodshot. "In front of NATO, in front of the general. Do you know what that cost me?" Michael adjusted his glasses. "You did that to yourself." Davidson shoved him hard against the wall. "I should break you right here." Michael didn't resist, didn't even raise a hand. His voice was calm. "If you do, everyone will know why, and they'll know what you've been hiding." Davidson froze, fury burned in his eyes. "You don't know anything." "I know enough," Michael said softly. For a heartbeat it seemed Davidson might strike anyway, but then he stepped back, jaw clenched, fists trembling. "You won't last long, Clerk. Not with men like Petrov watching, not with Chimera protecting him." And just like that he walked away, but the damage was done. Davidson had said the name aloud. Chimera. Confirmation of everything Michael already knew. That night Michael sat in the hidden room behind his closet, the map of Afghanistan glowing under a desk lamp. His fingers traced the valley, the betrayal, the ambush. He whispered Hayes' name like a vow. For 10 years he had hunted Chimera. Now Chimera was hunting him. But for the first time in a decade, Michael wasn't running. Why did Davidson's hands tremble when he left Petrov's quarters? The cameras caught it. Not the official base cameras, those angles were too clean, too edited for review. Roberts had his own feeds, hidden in maintenance ducts and unlisted networks. Grainy, but enough. Enough to show Sergeant Blake Davidson leaving the NATO delegation's quarters at 100 hours, shoulders rigid, jaw set, sweat beading on his temple despite the night's cold. Roberts played the footage twice, then a third time, his face carved in stone. Beside him, Michael watched without a word, arms crossed. "He's being handled," Roberts said finally. "Petrov got his hooks in him. Orders, threats. Leverage, could be money, could be family, could be his ego, doesn't matter. Davidson's compromised." Michael leaned closer to the monitor, studying Davidson's eyes. Not anger now, fear, and men like Davidson didn't scare easily. "He knows too much," Michael murmured. "If Petrov wants to burn him, he will. Unless—" Roberts finished the thought. "Unless Davidson does something to prove his loyalty." They both knew what that meant. An action, a strike, something that would put blood on Davidson's hands and silence on his tongue. Roberts killed the feed, the screen fading to black. "We can't let him move first. We use him." Michael adjusted his glasses, though his eyes stayed hard, as bait. The colonel's silence was agreement. The next morning the base hummed with a strange tension. Soldiers whispered in corners. Administrators lingered over their coffee. Even the air felt heavier. The demonstration had shifted something, and now the balance teetered. Jessica noticed it too. She caught Michael in the corridor, her expression tight. "What did Davidson say to you?" Michael hesitated, the truth pressing against the back of his throat, but lies were safer. Nothing worth repeating. She didn't buy it, her voice dropped. You're different, Michael. Since that fight, you walk differently. You look at people differently. Who are you? For a moment, he almost told her. The weight of 10 years, the betrayal, Hayes' death, Petrov's shadow. But then he saw Greg approaching, saw the concern in both their eyes and swallowed it down. Just a clerk, he said softly. That night, Robert's trap began. It wasn't elaborate plans failed under pressure. This was simple. Michael would be visible, alone, moving outside routine. A pattern broken, a lure irresistible to Davidson, to Petrov, to anyone watching. The chosen location was the motor pool. Cameras blind in one corner. Lighting poor. Just enough cover for watchers to believe they had the advantage. Robert's men would be nearby, hidden, ready. But the real test wasn't theirs. It was Michael's. At 2300, he walked the path slowly, deliberately, carrying a clipboard like it mattered. He looked every inch the clerk again, posture mild, shoulders slouched. But every sense was alive, alert, measuring shadows. Footsteps echoed. Davidson emerged, face tight, eyes darting. His fists clenched and unclenched, veins bulging with suppressed rage. You think you humiliated me once and it's over, he hissed. You think you can walk this base like nothing happened. Michael didn't answer, just watched, steady, calm. Davidson's voice cracked, desperation seeping through. They're watching me, Winters, him, Petrov. You don't understand. If I don't deliver, he broke off, breathing ragged. Michael's tone was quiet, even, then stopped delivering. Davidson's laugh was hollow, broken. You think it's that easy. You think men like him let go. No, you either serve or you disappear, and I'm not ready to disappear. He lunged then, not with precision, not with pride, but with panic. A swing wild and heavy. Michael caught it, redirected, twisted. Davidson crashed against the wall, gasping. Listen to me, Michael said low, his voice cutting through the dark. They used you just like they used us in the valley. You know the name, don't you? Chimera. The sergeant froze. His eyes flinched, a fraction of a second, but enough. Confirmation. Michael tightened his grip. Tell me, who is it? Davidson's jaw clenched. He shook his head violently. I can't, you don't understand. A sharp whistle split the night. Robert's men swarmed from the shadows, weapons ready. Davidson looked around wildly, realizing the trap. Robert stepped forward. Blake Davidson, you're under arrest for treason, collusion with a foreign power, and compromising U.S. security. Davidson's face collapsed. Fury, fear, betrayal, all tangled. He stared at Michael, teeth bared. You set me up. Michael met his gaze without blinking. You set yourself up. They dragged him away, shouting, cursing, promising vengeance. His words echoed down the corridor long after he was gone. But even as they secured him, Michael knew the job wasn't done. Davidson was a pawn. Petrov had sacrificed him the moment he entered that room at 100 hours. The real game was still in motion. That night, Roberts and Michael pored over Davidson's seized phone, his encrypted files, his burner accounts. Buried inside was a message, short, coded, unmistakable. Demonstration confirmed. Ghost alive, orders. And the reply, just one word. Erase. Michael stared at it, the glow of the screen painting his features. For 10 years he had been the hunter. Now the order was given. He was the hunted. Roberts leaned back, exhaling slow. It's begun. Michael adjusted his glasses, voice quiet, steady. Then we finish it. The chapel bell outside rang midnight, a hollow toll through the base. And somewhere in the shadows, Chimera was already moving. Why did the lights die just as Michael turned the corner? It was 200 and the base should have been quiet. Only the low hum of generators and the distant bark of dogs cut through the night. Michael had stayed late in the admin wing, deliberately visible, making sure anyone watching knew where he was. Roberts had wanted him under guard, but Michael insisted. If Chimera wanted him erased, let them come. And they did. The hallway plunged into darkness with a sudden snap, the hum of power silenced. Emergency lights failed to trigger. Too precise, too clean, an inside job. Michael dropped instantly, back against the wall, breath steady. His hand slid to the hidden blade tucked in his sleeve, a ghost's weapon, silent and sure. Footsteps soft, coordinated, 2, maybe 3. They moved like soldiers, not thugs. A door creaked open down the hall, then closed again, flanking. Michael's pulse slowed instead of quickening. 10 years of shadows had trained him for this. He listened, counted the steps, mapped the angles. A shadow lunged. The whisper of cloth, the gleam of steel. Michael pivoted, redirected, the blade slicing air where his throat had been. His counter was precise, elbow to ribs, twist of wrist, the man collapsing with a muffled gasp. Another came from behind. Michael dropped, swept low, and the attacker crashed into the first. He didn't wait. He moved, silent, fast, weaving through corridors now cloaked in darkness. But they were ready. Ahead, a figure blocked the exit, taller, broader. The outline was unmistakable. Davidson. Except Davidson was supposed to be in custody. Michael froze only a second, the realization cutting deep. If Davidson was here, then Robert's chain had already been compromised. Chimera's reach wasn't theoretical anymore. It was inside the walls. Davidson's grin gleamed in the dark. You thought chains could hold me. You thought Roberts was smarter than Petrov. He cracked his knuckles. Now I get my second chance. Michael's blade caught the faintest glint of moonlight through the window. This isn't about you anymore, Blake. You're just another pawn. Pawn? Davidson roared, charging. I'll show you pawn. The fight was brutal, close quarters. Davidson swung heavy, his fists hammers. Michael dodged, redirected, every movement conserving energy, precision over power. But Davidson was fueled by rage and desperation, each miss feeding the next strike. They crashed against walls, stumbled through overturned chairs. Michael's glasses shattered, one lens cracked. The mask was breaking, literally and figuratively. Davidson grabbed him by the collar, slamming him into the wall. You don't get it, Winters. Chimera doesn't care who you were. You're already dead. Michael's eyes burned through the broken glass. Then I've got nothing left to lose. His counter was clean, lethal. A strike to the throat, a twist of momentum. Davidson slammed into the ground, choking for breath. Michael stood over him, chest heaving. But before he could finish it, floodlights blazed. Dozens of boots thundered. Armed men, not Robert's people but Petrov's delegation security. Guns raised. Orders shouted in Russian and English. Michael raised his hand slowly, blade still hidden in his sleeve. Davidson coughed on the ground, pointing weakly. That's him. That's the ghost. Petrov stepped through the circle of light, immaculate as ever, calm amid chaos. His gaze fixed on Michael, cold satisfaction in his eyes. There you are. Robert's voice cut across the yard like a blade. Stand down. He strode in with his own unit, rifles trained, tension taut. This is U.S. soil. You don't give orders here, Colonel. Petrov smiled faintly. We are allies, are we not? This man attacked my delegation. Michael's voice was steady, carrying across the silence. Your delegation attacked me. Robert's gaze flicked to him, then back to Petrov. We'll sort this through proper channels. The standoff hung heavy, a razor's edge. Soldiers on both sides shifted, fingers on triggers. One wrong breath and the yard would drown in blood. Finally, Petrov stepped back, palms raised in mock surrender. Of course, we are allies for now. His eyes lingered on Michael. But ghosts, Colonel, they don't belong among the living. He turned, his men following like shadows, Davidson dragged with them. Within seconds they were gone, leaving silence in their wake. Robert's men surrounded Michael, weapons still raised, unsure. Roberts barked, stand down. And the barrels lowered, though unease lingered in every face. Michael wiped blood from his lip, his glasses hanging broken from one ear. He looked at Roberts, voice low. "They're moving faster than we thought." Roberts nodded grimly. "Davidson's escape proves it. Someone inside my chain signed the order. Chimera isn't a rumor anymore. They're here." Michael adjusted the broken frames, a ghost staring through fractured glass. "Then we stop hiding. We draw them out." Robert studied him a long moment, then gave the faintest nod. "Agreed. But once we do, there's no going back." Michael's reply was steady, unshaken. There was never any going back. That night, Robert smuggled Michael into the secure comms center. Together, they sifted through intercepted messages, coded transmissions, fragments of orders. One file surfaced, buried deep, almost erased, a travel manifest. Petrov scheduled for a covert flight within 48 hours. Destination, undisclosed. Roberts leaned over the screen, voice gravel low. "He's moving, which means Chimera's about to close the net." Michael's jaw tightened. "Then we close it first." The plan wasn't clean. It wasn't official. It wasn't even sanctioned. But for Michael, it was simple. Follow Petrov. Force the confrontation. Rip the mask off Chimera no matter the cost. As dawn broke, Michael stood by the chapel window, watching sunlight spill through stained glass. His reflection in the colors wasn't a clerk anymore. Not even a soldier. It was something else, something forged in betrayal and silence, sharpened over 10 years of shadows. And in 48 hours, the shadows would burn. Why would Petrov leave the base under cover of darkness if he had nothing to hide? The answer was simple. He wasn't leaving, he was being extracted. The information came through Robert's back channel. Petrov would be flown out at 200 hours under NATO diplomatic clearance, a route designed to bypass scrutiny. If he left, he'd vanish into Moscow's shadows, untouchable again. And wherever Petrov went, Chimera would cover his tracks. Michael stared at the manifest, his hands steady, though inside the storm rose. 10 years he had waited. 10 years of silence, of files and fragments, of chasing a name that never had a face. Petrov had been the blade, but Chimera was the hand that drove it. Robert stood beside him, jaw tight. "If we move now. No paperwork, no sanction, we'll be ghosts too." Michael adjusted his cracked glasses, the lenses reflecting the glow of the screen. "Then let's haunt them." The night was sharp and cold when they moved. A skeleton team, Roberts, Sullivan, and 3 men they trusted without question. No radios, no chatter, only signals and silence. The airstrip loomed ahead, floodlights casting long shadows. A transport plane idled, its engines low, the delegation's vehicles already lined up. Guards in NATO uniforms ringed the perimeter, but their posture, their formation, too rigid, too rehearsed. Petrov's men, not Nate. Michael crouched in the brush, eyes narrowing. Petrov stepped from a black SUV, his uniform perfect, his stride calm, every inch the untouchable colonel. But it was Petrov that made Michael's breath catch. It was the man beside him. American uniform, senior rank, face weathered by years in command, General Hamilton. Robert's whisper cut like glass. "God help us, Chimera." The weight of it sank in. Not some faceless ghost buried in files, not some distant traitor overseas. Chimera was here, the base commander himself, the man who had shaken Michael's hand after the demonstration, who had praised him for stepping up, the man who had ordered Davidson's fight, who had laughed with NATO while betrayal bled through every seam. Michael's pulse steadied instead of spiking. This was it. Hayes' ghost stood here, 10 years waiting. Robert's voice was grim. "We can't take them both in alive. Too many eyes, too much power. We end it tonight." Michael's gaze locked on Hamilton, the man who had signed Hayes' death without firing a bullet. "No," he whispered. "I end it." The strike was silent. Robert's team fan left, drawing fire the moment the first guard spotted movement. Suppressed rounds cracked the night, shadows collapsing into dirt. The perimeter erupted, shouts in English and Russian. Michael moved through the chaos like water, low and precise, slipping between bursts of light and shadow. His blade found one throat, his elbow shattered another jaw. Every motion clean, controlled, inevitable. And then he was there, 10 meters from Petrov and Hamilton. Hamilton barked orders, calm amid the storm. "Get him on the plane." Petrov moved toward the ramp, but his eyes flicked, catching Michael through the smoke. Recognition lit them, cold and sharp. "The ghost," Petrov murmured. Michael's voice carried across the din, steady, unshaken. "You shouldn't have left me alive." Hamilton turned, fury flashing. "Winters, you should have stayed dead." And then it broke. Petrov drew first, his pistol snapping up. Michael rolled, the shot sparking against metal. He closed distance fast, faster than Petrov expected. A strike, a twist, the gun clattering away. Petrov fought like a soldier still in his prime, brutal, efficient. But Michael was sharper. Every move was a memory from the valley, every strike repayment for Hayes' blood. They crashed against the plane's ramp, trading blows, steel against flesh. Petrov snarled in Russian, spitting curses, but Michael's silence was heavier than words. He caught Petrov's arm, twisted, drove him down. The Russian colonel hit the ground hard, gasping. "Hayes," Michael said softly, blade poised. "This is for him." The blade slipped clean. Petrov's body stilled. The shadow that had haunted 10 years lay broken in the dirt. But Hamilton was still standing. The general had drawn his sidearm, steady despite the chaos. His eyes met Michael's, cold, ruthless. "You think you've won. You think killing him changes anything. I am Chimera, and men like me don't fall to ghosts." Michael straightened slowly, bloodied, breath heavy, but his gaze unbroken. "Men like you fall the same as anyone else." Hamilton fired. Michael moved. The round grazed his shoulder, fire tearing through scarred flesh. He dropped low, surged forward, hand locking the pistol's slide, forcing it upward. The two men crashed together, strength against strength, 10 years of betrayal burning between them. Hamilton fought like the commander he was, disciplined, brutal, relentless. But Michael wasn't fighting for orders or power or chains of command. He was fighting for Hayes, for the men left in the dirt of Koringal Valley, for 10 years of silence. The struggle ended in a single, brutal motion. Michael wrenched the pistol free, turned it, pressed it against Hamilton's chest. The general's eyes widened, shock cracking the mask. "You're not a ghost," Hamilton spat. Michael's voice was low, final. "No, I'm a reminder." The shot echoed across the airstrip. Hamilton fell. Chimera was no more. The silence afterward was heavy, broken only by the whine of the plane's engines dying as Robert's men secured the field. Bodies lay scattered, shadows dissolved. Petrov gone. Hamilton gone. The cancer cut out. Michael stood over the wreckage, blood soaking his shirt, breath ragged. Roberts approached slowly, his eyes on the fallen general. "You did it." Michael didn't look up. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper. "No, I just finished what they started." Roberts put a hand on his shoulder, firm, grounding. "It's over." Michael finally lifted his gaze to the horizon, the faint glow of dawn breaking. For the first time in 10 years, the valley's shadow felt lighter. Hayes was gone, but the silence between them was no longer betrayal. It was memory. He turned, walking away from the wreckage, from the corpses, from the war that had followed him across a decade. He didn't look back. Because some wars don't end with flags or medals. They end with a single truth. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.